Okay, it's about 101. Numbers are slowing down a little bit. It's a whole bunch of 378 people. Hello, everybody. And thank you so much for joining us for this webinar and this product launch today. I'm so happy, and I know Don and Emily are excited that you've chosen to spend your time with us today. So we really appreciate that. Just again, hello, everybody. A really warm welcome to all of you. Thanks again, for joining us for the launch of this, our newest Alvanon standard, the North America Women's Standard. My name is Jordan Huggins. I am the marketing manager here at Alvanon. I'll be your moderator, kind of host right here real quick up top. While everybody's still joining, and while I'm giving you my spiel, I'm going to go ahead and just launch a quick poll. Just two simple questions. Are you in forms? Are you and your brand in forms? Are you interested in forms? And are you in 3D? Are you in 3D product development? We actually just completed a webinar and a Q&A webinar follow-up just a couple of weeks ago, talking specifically about digital product creation, stuff like that. So feel free to fill that out while I'm giving you my spiel about technical issues and stuff like that. Again, I'm going to post this in the chat, but if you'd like to follow along, we actually have the measurements and specifications brochures for this full series that's available. And I will throw those into the chat so you can access those and follow along. For those of you not familiar with Alvanon, we are a global apparel technology company focused on the body and its application and implications in the apparel industry. And we're very excited to be introducing this newest Alvanon fit and sizing standard that we've called North America Women. This standard represents the actual size, shape, and stature of women in North America today. Don and Emily are going to give you a deep dive into this, much better than I ever could. But I would say that this standard rounds out our full catalog of sizing standards for North American populations, which includes men, women, and children as well, as extended size children. A couple housekeeping issues before I hand it off. I just want to get out of the way. Today's presentation will run about 40 minutes. We're going to leave plenty of time for Q&A at the end. And again, you can submit those questions via the Q&A button in your Zoom toolkit or toolbar right at the bottom of your screen. Again, the webinar is being recorded. It will be sent out automatically to you if you've registered here. So even if you have to jump off halfway, or a quarter of the way in, the recording will be sent out automatically 24 hours from the end of this webinar. So about 2 p.m. tomorrow, you will receive a link to the recording. If you experience any technical difficulties during the presentation, you can reach out to me directly via the chat option or chat function. You can send it directly to the host and panelists or to myself, and I will do my best to help you. Obviously, you should be hearing sound right now, me talking. There's no other sound playing, and you should be able to see Don's screen or a screen right now, which is the title slide of the presentation. Now, that was my spiel, and I apologize it took too long. Without any further ado, I'd like to go ahead and hand it off and introduce the leading consultants on this project and the new research and today's speakers. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Alvanon's Executive Director of Consulting, Don Howard, and Senior Consultant, Emily Robertson-Hood. Emily, Don, why don't you guys go ahead and take it away?
Jordan, thank you very much, and welcome everybody. It's so nice to see all these greetings from the Friends of Alvanon across really the globe. Nice to have you here with us today. We are very excited here to present what we think is really a long overdue standard series. For those of you who work in the space of women's and in kind of this inclusive size and shape product category, we've developed these standards in an attempt to accommodate the challenges and complexities of these inclusive ranges and sizes and try to provide some hopefully out-of-the-box solutions to support the many brand strategies that exist in this space. There's so many ways that people approach this problem, and we've tried to tear apart that complexity and kind of bring you something that we hope is going to be helpful. So, why do we even work on standards? We really think it's important to offer regional standards. We've made every effort to provide these updated standards as kind of off-the-shelf fit tool options for our clients, both as the physical body fit forms, and then today, of course, as those digital twins, the identical 3D Alva forms. And the reason these standards need to be updated is really in our consulting work and all the modeling work we do, we acknowledge that there are changes in the population in terms of body size and shape. We know that there's changing in demand for size coverage, and the ever evolving technology and end use features of these standard bodies are very important. And then in today's world, of course, the need to be able to see complete size sets in 3D, and that goes beyond kind of a singular focus of the core fit size. So, today you really must have a body standard. In the old days, we used to say, if nothing else, it's for size consistency and to eliminate returns. But, at the end of the day, if you don't have a standard, there's really no logical basis for decision-making and taking action. So even beyond the traditional use of standards for a garment evaluation, we're also talking about, line planning, marketing, and selling. So you might be wasting valuable time in your organization if you're not utilizing established standards to their fullest extent, especially in today as we move into 3D. Now, there's a couple of overarching concepts I'd like to talk about right now surrounding standardization, some key concepts that we might not always think about in terms of standard. One thing is really about sustainability. Sustainability is a very inclusive and comprehensive topic. At the end of the day, it's always been intended to do good things for the planet, right? And today it's tied to corporate environmental, social, governance metrics, kind of as an investment criteria. And one of the challenges was that ESG is those efforts can be difficult to identify and to quantify. So even though within an organization there are sustainability goals in apparel that can be focused on many elements throughout the product life cycle that can be measured and therefore managed, standardized fit and sizing strategies can make a significant impact on sustainability objectives that can also be measured and managed. First and foremost is the reduction of physical sample iterations that end up going into the landfill. And the other thing that we know as an industry is we create and try to sell too many garments, right? So if you have an optimized size range that can afford you an economy of SKUs, these are the types of metrics that can very significantly impact any of your sustainability sustainability goals. And these are the kind of things that you as a team can directly affect is sitting where you are. Another key concept is having consistent and accurate body shape and sizing standards. So, as the apparel industry continues to adopt and integrate 3D in the development process, standardized tools and sizing strategies really become foundational for success in 3D. And we know over the past couple of years there have been some very aggressive product development, digital product creation goals that have been set in place. And the development teams require more realism for their fit standard avatars. So Alvanon continues to evolve avatars to become more human-like in appearance for use throughout the enterprise. So that body standard consistent throughout the enterprise. And then one last high-level conversation that we really have to get into is about inclusivity. And we know that many brands struggle with social messaging and technical solutions. So like any other, when we talk about inclusivity in the industry, it's a very large umbrella that can mean very different things to many different people. So we always advise our clients, the first thing you must do is identify the target customer shape and size range requirements. And the inclusive part is about messaging your strategy to the customer. And the standardization is how you accomplish that. And I know we get a lot of questions from brands. A lot of brands are doing a lot of groundbreaking work on this subject, but we feel like you really need to separate those two topics. Great. Emily, that was quite a setup, I'd have to say, a lot of talking on my behalf. Why don't you go ahead and let's start talking about, what we've uncovered here.
Yeah, great. So, people often wonder when we look at developing a line of standards or something like that, what do we look at? Well, of course, we look at body measurements. I mean, that is what people are absolutely fixated on. But the other thing we take a really good look at is body shape. And one question we ask ourselves is, are our standards going to have more curve or less curve? And we're incredibly lucky to have body scan data that can help us out here. So the choices that Alvanon has made in this series will look at the predominantly significant portion of the population. So where did we see most of the population? All right, what standard might fit most people well? We also looked at traditionally underserved body shapes where we've had brand demand for custom forms and didn't offer a standard option. So we wanted to rectify this, make sure that everybody had options to standard forms, and hopefully that's what you'll see in our launch here today. So we've developed 3 shapes. The first one is this one that we talked about, the shape that is the predominantly significant portion of the population. So this is where we see most of many women sitting. Regardless of her size, her evolving shape remains the predominant one. So we know as you go from 00 up to 22, or if you even go as high as our line now goes to 36, what shape remains the predominant shape, and is there an evolution pattern that we can track there? And so that is what we've chosen to call out as our standard. Now we have an extremely exciting development that we hope people love, and this is our bold curve. Her skeletal formation is really what informs the amount of curve here. She's got this smaller waist, the bigger hip thigh. And I mean, we've all heard from this woman before, if I buy something big enough for my hips, it doesn't fit my waist, right? We've all heard from her. So when we take a look at this woman in this shape, her shape really retains this high level of waist definition and her lower body curviness, no matter what her size is. So we'll actually see throughout the entire size range how it's shifted, and she becomes this very curvy lady throughout. The last one is an interesting offering for us that frankly I pushed very hard for, didn't I, Don? This one is the athletic woman. This woman has developed a higher level of musculature in areas like her back, her pecs, and her arms and legs. So this is going to be a very nice one to have, particularly as you move from that physical to digital platform. Brands really want to get that level of realism in their avatars and in their digital imaging. And we feel like not only the athletic, but the bold curve and the standard will deliver on that. So Don, talk to us a little bit about why we chose these core sizes. We get frequently asked about core sizes, and we chose a few. So let's take a look at those.
Well, before we go there, Emily, I mean, here's the visual that kind of explains the conditions that you've been described. Can you just kind of walk us through that?
Yes. So the one that we talked about is our predominant indicator in the data set was this standard off on the left. And we chose a size 6, which Don will talk a little bit more about why we chose those core sizes. But there she is in what you would call straight sizing. And then you'll notice her bigger counterpart, the standard plus, is sitting over there. And she has got still what we would consider to be an average amount of body weight distributed and proportions. And you're going to see some very cool imagery that our teams have developed to help you really understand how this body is growing. The next one we see is the bold curve. And this one, as we pointed out, has got more of that fullness and body mass through her seat and low hip. We're going to enjoy seeing her as she grows throughout the line. You can see that what happens in terms of body mass distribution when you get up to plus. And then on the far right, we've got the athletic body, who you can see from the side. Notice the shading and sort of the toneness within her abdominal area. She's got that same sort of feature in her chest area, throughout her back. Her legs are a little bit bigger. And that's an exciting development for brands that are using a body for developing physically activity wear. So Don, let's go ahead and talk why we chose.
So, from a technical point of view, for those of you who have worked with us in the past, our methodology is very straightforward. We want to identify what is the most predominant core size that clients might work with in their evaluation. And then from there, develop the amount of bodies that would be necessary for a range. So you might be wondering, why did we develop a size 6 for bold, curve, standard, and athletic? And it kind of reflects a trend over the last several years, I'd say, where people, instead of fitting maybe on an 8 or a 10 or even a 12, have migrated to fitting on a size 6 for a number of reasons. Many times it's because of quite frankly, not having model availability. Another reason is to kind of double up on the showroom sample or the marketing sample so that you didn't have to make 2 of those. And then when we look at the standard, when I use, say, plus 20, which I'll circle back to in a minute, this is basically the most predominant size that people use as a core evaluation size when they do exclusively a plus size range. Okay, so now I really have to point out at this moment in time that plus, the word we're using here, is not a pejorative. Plus is an industry technical term. It's been around for years. And what it does is it designates a need to address evolving body size and shape that require accommodation if you want the clothing to fit well, right? If you want clothing that fits well, this is a specialty. As a matter of fact, for those of us who've been in this market, for more than 30 plus years, this was a specialty. You had special people on hand, pattern makers that were specialists in this, merchants, designers, who all worked toward creating this special product so that you could have well-fitting program. So again, it's a technical clothing classification, and it is not intended to be exclusionary.
Yeah, and another thing we might want to point out about this is that we've actually queried people in the industry to try to find out better terminologies. And what's very interesting, because we deal with clients worldwide. In Europe, there's a very strong use of the word curve, which is a great name. We love that. We've tried to introduce it into the North American market, and it just didn't fly. People are still very comfortable with that name plus, because it really is a merchandising classification as well as a size range.
Yeah, if you have any suggestions for better ideas for a technical term, we're all ears.
And as we said, we have tried to bring out bodies and shapes here that we feel like will serve the industry well. If you remember, I know when I got into the industry and went to design school, there was only one choice. And we certainly have gone a lot farther than just that one choice, that standard form made out of paper mache or whatever it is. So to have a variety of shapes is really going to serve our variety of customers well. So we're going to talk a little bit about the standard shape to begin with, and this is where we'll see the full range, and you'll be able to see the straight and the plus sizing. Okay, so here's one of these really great graphics that our modeling team has been working to develop, and this you'll see it again, but my colleagues and I have been using this for so many different things, but it really, really talks about body growth. And when we talk about the standard shape, this is where we talk about this predominantly significant portion of the population that we see in body scan data has been developed at every single size that you see shown here to be indicated. So her body shape evolves as she gets bigger or smaller, but that evolving shape is still the predominant one within the data set. All right, so here is the straight sizing from 00 to 22 XXL. And you'll notice that all of these standards now have heads, hands, and feet. Guess what? When you're working in 3D, not having a head, it's very disconcerting to you. So these all have heads, hands, or feet. And many of you know that we have also improved a more naturalistic shoulder on these. We've got great things like a denim rise or a deeper crevice definition for the ability to fit closer to the body. So some really kind of exciting developments. Here's the plus version, which is 14W to 36W. And this is a really great example of how body mass really shifts. So take a look from left to right, and you can see what happens with body mass and how it shifts. And Don's going to talk a little bit about how that affects sizing.
Yeah, so again, if you think back to my comment about common groupings and common sizing strategies that we encounter in the industry, so those are two examples of if you had a decidedly plus range, and if you're offended by that, forgive me, it's a technical term, or what unfortunately is called as regular range from a technical point of view, and then we also have brands who have both in their strategy, right? They have a separate range, and they for each of those sizing classifications, and they do this because they have different channels for distribution. They have different customers that come to them. If you think about a wholesale market versus a retail market, a vertical retailer versus someone who is selling product on other platforms. If you're a digital pure play, you might need to have different ranges for different purposes. It's very common. And one of the things that becomes a challenge is you see we've isolated here what could be potentially a size range overlap. We call it a rationalized overlap. And that's when, the size names at the upper end of the reg range and the lower end of the plus range the bodies are different, but the size name is different. So that again adds to the complexity of the challenge that you have in this kind of a distribution model. And many times it is definitely always related to your legacy selling practices. So when we work with clients, we try to rationalize and minimize these overlaps. So again, as we talked about earlier, to have a more sustainable approach, depending on what your ultimate distribution channel will be. Now, the other thing that's become very popular recently is this concept of an inclusive size range that's continuous in nature. And that's great. We love the messaging on that, the social messaging of not being exclusive, but being inclusive in sizing. But if you think back to my comment about being a technical term, there's a point where the technical people must reblock the garments, again, if you want the garments to fit well. The day that we have customers who don't want good fitting product, I guess we could all hang it up. But what we want to know here is that even though to the consumer it's inclusive, the elves are behind the scenes here reblocking. So again, it's another strategy that people employ. It might look seamless, but there's a technical solution behind the scenes.
And Don, as you pointed out before, in order to use that sort of a strategy, you need to have a merchandising and distribution strategy to back that up. You can't have a plus pad necessarily and a Misty pad or whatever you want to call it. It really is all linked into a merchandising and distro strategy as well.
That's an excellent example. So you got the social messaging, and then you have to have the merchandising strategy, the technical strategy, the distribution strategy behind that.
Yeah, so just to sort of recap where we are, I'm going to show you another tool we love, and this is the one where we can see how growth is growing in this video that has been created by our team. Notice what's happening at the inseam, my friends, as you get bigger. Don, your video stopped for some reason. Can you give it another?
I apologize. Let me continue.
Yeah, notice what's happening in the inseam. We have gone in our data, we're seeing all different things in terms of body mass and what happens to the human body. And this is a very useful tool, particularly for people who deal with braiding. The one on the left is one of my personal favorites too, although it's so pretty you want to frame it.
Maybe it could be an NFT.
Yeah.
All right, you want to continue, Emily?
Let's do. All right, big exciting reveal is our bold curve. And this is probably one of the curviest bodies we have ever revealed, right? So let's take a look at this. So how curvy is curvy? Well, we went in and we looked within the marketplace to understand that. We looked within the data, and there are brands that have gone to the curvy side. And really, what we found was that her skeletal formation is really driving this, with a smaller waist, bigger hip and thigh, as we said, and she retains that curviness no matter what size she is. That's right. Someone has mentioned her waist to hip is even more than 10. Oh, you bet. And if you look in the marketplace, it's well more than 10, as is our example. So let's take a look at the full size set, Don.
Yeah, and what you said was so important, Emily. It's not about size, it's about shape. And those of us who have worked on curvy product for many years know that you can be a curvy 00, or you could be a curvy 36. Isn't that true?
Yeah, and look at these. You'll notice that shape retains as we go throughout the entire line. Yeah, so this should be an exciting development for people that want to fit on this type of body, because really it has been an underserved portion of the market.
And the size grouping is the same. It's just starting out with a different shaping characteristic. Super. All right, we get lots of loves and kisses coming in. Keep it coming. Nice. I have to tell you, we had some internal people who might exhibit these characteristics that were very excited that we were working on and developing this bold curve. But wait, there's more.
There's more. Yes. So as we move into our plus range, or the curve size set here from 14 to 36, we can see that she does retain that curve. She retains a certain amount of fullness through her hips as well. So this is really exciting for us. She is quite similar above the waist. That's what our data told us. So if you're looking for comparisons above the waist, we don't see quite so much there. The data said it was mostly a below the waist type thing.
Very cool. So again, for those brands for whom a plus size strategy, this is the range. And then of course, it's the same thing we talked about earlier. We have many brands who have multiple distribution channels that have customers that come to us. Where's your plus range? Where's your reg range? Whether we like it or not, it's very predominant in the sales and distribution channels. So again, it's just about which starting shape do you want, and the shape has nothing to do with size. Whether she's XXS or all the way to 6S, she's got that predominantly bold curve shape.
Yeah, and we did see it. I just saw a question about another place in the globe that this might not be enough curve for. And yeah, absolutely. That's why we call it the North American range of women. This is what we find predominantly in North America.
Super. And here again, and this is an example of a continuous size range when you still, and probably more than ever, would have to reblock to capture that very challenging body shape when it comes to creating well-fitting garments, right? Well-fitting garments for that body shape is our end goal. You're going to say something, Emily?
Yeah, let's talk about reblocking, because we did have a question come in about that. And that is really a technical term. What that means is, so you might be sampling and fitting on size small in this example. Great. So you can grade down to XXS. You can maybe grade up to large, or 1X if you wish. But then, because of all the changes that are happening, you really want to take that garment and refit it, put it on the 2X woman. That's our proposal here. Be able to see, are the style lines right? Is it pulling the same? What do I need to do to make it fit this size and up from there? So it might require 2 graded nests, for example, one for the lower end of the range, one for the upper end of the range. And many brands simply have 2 sets of blocks that they have, one for the lower end of the range, one for the upper.
We debate this internally all the time. We know that there are many brands that try to grade their way up into to this range. And there's a point at which it just does not work anymore. You can't accommodate, it's not only the primary measurements and shaping, but all the tertiary, secondary, tertiary armholes, rises, all the other elements that you need to accomplish a good fit. You got to start all over again, and then you can begin the grading process up from there. So again, it's a technical best practice. There are a lot of brands who have tried to get around this, but at the end of the day, you just have to acknowledge it. And that's why I say we want to separate an inclusive message, which of course we all want to have an inclusive message, from a technical solution that supports it. So hopefully, if you use those words to frame your discussions internally, you can have more productive conversations about your sizing strategies.
Yeah.
Right.
So go ahead and roll the tape, as they say. Again, this is a great example of how the body is actually growing. And as you can see, yeah, you know, her ratio waist to hip is differing because she's putting on more body mass, but she's still what we call that bold curve woman. Absolutely.
It's fascinating to watch, but
yeah. And, you know, some of you may have noticed that we've assigned sizes. You can see right there, we've assigned sizes numerically, 00 all the way up to 36. We also have assigned alpha sizes just very plainly because we see this predominance of alpha size clothing in the market. It seems like it's an international standard that's well understood by absolutely everybody. And frequently people will come to our sales guys and say, so what do you have in a size small? So to help the industry out, we've taken a deep look into our customer base and seen what people are calling a small, a medium, a large in terms of size, numeric sizing equivalencies, just and assigned alpha that way.
So Emily, let's talk about the last body shape, and that's athletic. Your favorite.
You know what? It is my favorite because I've worked with active brands for a very, very long time, and they've always been super, super challenged to find a form that shows a level of athleticism for them. So let's take a look at how she differs. So as I mentioned, this has been a specialty form for many, many years. So the only way to get anything that looked vaguely athletic was to do it through a custom form. We really felt like that was a huge gap in the marketplace, and we wanted to correct that. So this woman will have a more developed level of back, pecs, arms, legs, and musculature on her. Again, a great way to make that transition from physical into digital. And yes, she does go up from 00 up to Don, flip to the next slide if you would. She goes up to 22. So you can see that she does go up, but you see she's not a plus. She's part of this lower straight range. So yeah, she does go up to 22 indeed. And one of the things about this is our data really didn't indicate that there is extended sizing beyond 22. We know that there's going to be a call for brands that perhaps want that because they do, and they should create product for people beyond that size. In our experiences, these technical solutions have almost always been customized. So we offer it up through 22, which, as we've already pointed out, could be your reblocking point. And again, Don, if you would roll the tape here, we can see just like the other size sets, it's growing. And to the person who said, is the inseam getting shorter as you get bigger? Yeah, it absolutely is. You get that pressure on the pelvic floor, which actually begins to drop and lower the inseam lengths. Another thing you'll notice on some of these forms is the body, why it's got body mass added to it. It is impossible in a rigid form to add things like rolls or softness or things like that, which is why at a certain level, this is a fit tool and not a realistic body, which of course is what we use our wonderful fit models for, is to see how it's going to move on a body that's got perhaps a little bit different level of body mass distribution.
Yeah, and these standard tools have always had certain conventions because at the end of the day, that's what they are. They're tools for garment evaluation. They're not going to be exactly like the human body.
Yeah, great. Don, so can you summarize for us?
Sure. So just in summary here, I know we got a lot of questions, but you know, some other things to think about when it comes to standardization in your world, right? The way forward to sustainability, responsible fashion. We know the apparel industry continues to adopt and integrate 3D product development processes, and the standardization tools and sizing strategies. Not only are they foundational for success in 3D, but they certainly lead directly to sustainability. Another key concept that we want to, again, talk about, because we worked with brands over the years on helping them try to solve this. Inclusivity is a very big umbrella. It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. At the end of the day, as a brand, you really have to get crystal clear about who your target customer is for shape and size range requirements. And then you want to develop the inclusive social messaging angle. And the standardization is how you get there. So continuous sizing absolutely can be done, but it will demand technical reblocking, again, to create well-fitting garments for these folks. Or you can have separate ranges that have rationalized overlaps. You know, either way, you have to identify the technical solution that's going to map to your brand merchandising strategy and distribution model. These things are all linked together. But at the end of the day, no matter what you've done, it requires very clear messaging for the consumer, so she knows what you've done and what you're delivering for her. Really, really kind of important concept here. You know, for all of you in the audience that are the technical geeks, it's been so surprising, I mean, not so surprising, but the resurgence of the discussion about blocks as a fundamental tool in 3D for success. You know, we've heard it at the PI conferences. All the early adopters are saying, of course we have to have blocks as a tool. So just so you know, with every other standard series we offer, we develop the primary garment blocks, and we only, for women, advocate the use of 5, right? You shouldn't need any more than that to start a good block library, right? So right now, in development for release soon, are the standard bot core size blocks. Of course, just like everything else, that's where you start, you develop those, and then you do the grading from there. So we're talking about the standard 6, which is our correlation to a small, the standard plus 21W2X, bold curve at 6S, and bold curve plus 20W2X, and of course the athletic 6S. And we feel strongly that the woven shirt and the knit tee on the top, the woven trouser, the skirt, and the knit legging are on the bottom are the only ones you need to build a successful block library program.
Yeah, and obviously these blocks are available if you're not in 3D, right? You can use them.
That's true. Yeah, physical or 3D, absolutely. We develop simultaneously in 3D and prove concept in the physical. That's our methodology. We gained a lot of traction on that. It works, but again, it's trust and verify. We must see them in the physical to validate, because the blocks are really the starting point for everything. And then finally, the authentic body standard is becoming increasingly important. Now, you remember when I talked earlier about you must have a body standard, and especially now in 3D, right? So, I'm very proud of the work that Alvanon, Jason, and team, Janice, leadership, of really listening to what our clients need from us. And the overwhelming response is we need a fit form that looks more like a person, right? So because of the proprietary unified mesh that we've created, it's allowed us to move forward and be able to provide these avatars in a way that become much more lifelike for the end users. So again, from a merchandising, line planning point of view, from selling, marketing, end use customer, this authentic body standard, we know, will be the key to success for the future. So, having said all that, hey, Emily, look at that, 40 minutes on the dot. I think it's time to open up for some Q&A.
Yeah, I know that Jordan is sorting through these questions for us. So Jordan, throw one over the plate there, would you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there were a lot of questions that came in, and they're really wonderful. Really quick, there were some questions around somebody just in the chat was asking other people in the chat if they were in 3D or forms or whatever. So I just thought it might be interesting to publish the poll results so that everybody in here, there was about 550 people, which is wonderful, that attended this. I just wanted you all to take a look at what the rest of your peers are doing in the industry. It's just a kind of a peek behind the curtains. Now, a lot of questions came in, and I was doing my best to try and group them as quickly as possible. There were a lot of questions around if this is available for other ranges, regions, geographical regions and stuff like that. I would just quickly call out that this is the North American women's. I will put the link in the chat, but we have developed standards for a whole number of geographical regions: China, Japan, South America, Europe was most recently developed and released and stuff like that. And we have webinars for a number of those that Don, Emily, and some of the other consulting team have gone into. So hopefully that addresses some of the questions about sizing standard, like and being available for other global regions. The one question that came in about, is the athletic body type a good basis for Olympic uniforms? And I think generally, Emily, I've spoken to you about the kind of purpose of the athletic form, and I was hoping so. The general question is the athletic body type a good basis for Olympic uniforms? And maybe you can share some of that insight about kind of the purpose for this body overall.
Right. As I mentioned, that what we feel like is this is a good body that gives options for people that are developing, athletic wear, athleisure wear, things that need to be fitted more closely to the body, to a more toned body. So what type of Olympic wear in terms of if it's a super functional thing, like I think about something Simone Biles wears, maybe not, because also Simone Biles is a petite, so may not be so good for her, but certainly it might be appropriate depending on what the functional piece of wearing apparel is.
Yeah, one of the things bear in mind, when we talk about athletic as a classification, brands will drill down into the type of sport, right? So what we've tried to accommodate is the most common attributes that might be represented in a more athletic body, right? So you'll have the running team tell you that runners are built differently. You'll have the climbing team tell you that climbers are built differently. Those get into more customized solutions. So I think the general takeaway is athletic is a body type that would fit most athletes well, but might not be specific for suitable for a very specific end use sport.
Don, we're getting a lot of questions about petite. We are going to offer these in petite, right?
Yeah, how long it takes to develop these standards, we continually ask ourselves, what's the next best standard to offer? I can promise you that petite is very high in the running right now. So we'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, that was just that. A lot of questions came in around the stature. Do you have some comments on height grades per size? Have you kept the height the same for these standards? So I think you just answered several questions that came in that long-term in the pipeline, you guys plan on addressing petite and tall. And there was an explicit question, I think, if I can find it, apologies. There's so many that came in. Will you be developing a petite and tall standard?
I can pick off a few here if you want me to. What size qualifiers define your core sizes? Does size 6 equal alpha 4-6 and size 20 equal alpha 18-20? Absolutely. We always advocate that you fit to the biggest numeric size of the alpha correlation. So in our case, our size 6, we're correlating with the size small, which would sit over a 4-6. Size 20 would fit over an alpha 18-20. So it's a great question, and that's the answer. We also had a quick question about the age range. The standard that we've developed is for an adult, and we would call her out at 25 to 40. We know that that's a very common demographic for adults, and this is an adult standard series. Anything else? Emily, did you see any quick ones we can pick off here?
Just questions about modifications. If people want modifications, then that certainly becomes a custom form, doesn't it?
Yes, it certainly does.
Yeah, these are these are meant to be accessible to everybody, available. I mean, and we do modifications all the time. These have just been developed for people that want them off the rack, as it were.
I have a question here about height, grade per size. It's a great question. In all the data we have around the world, there's no correlation between people getting bigger or smaller and getting taller and shorter. So you will note, especially if you saw the body loop of the bodies that are nested, like the kind of the Russian dolls, the stature remained identical. But yes, of course, the inseam got shorter as they got bigger because of the concentric body mass that's in play. So our standards would never get bigger and smaller on the body. There are people who do choose to grade their product that way, and I think that's a merchandising design choice.
There was a quick one here that came in. I love the bold curve for women. Being mindful of the body shape of the customer is key to developing a correct size chart. Now, what would be the men's body shapes? Why is inclusivity regarding body shapes and size only being considered for women's clothing? And I am happy to say that it's not. That this women's standard in these 3 sizes are actually the final piece in the full North American standard puzzle. We've already released and have done a webinar on the North American men's sizing, which was last year, I believe. And then we also have not just 1 size, but 2 size ranges for children, a children's size, which we've called like a standard, and then also an extended size children. Based on the data, it showed that there was a need for that sizing standard. Again, I'm putting this link in the chat, but there's a full list of all of our available sizing standards on our website. And I just put that link in the chat so you can find that. So the short answer to your question is that we're actually trying to be inclusive of every sizing standard that we can develop.
Mentioning here about Europe, we launched our European standard series for men, women, and children, I believe 2 years ago. So that's available that you can go into. I think we're getting a question about cup size. I think our cup size, I know, is a size B. For the 6, it's going to be a 34B, which is a very, very common fitting size for bras. What we do know is, and we get into the larger sizes, it isn't always about the fullness of the cup. It's a lot about the band size and the distribution of that bra size. So for those of you who make larger bras, there are a couple of experts out there who do it all every day of the week. They know that intuitively, by the time you get to the larger sizes, it's more about the distribution of the overall mass, not necessarily the cup size itself. All right.
So if people are interested in buying the blocks, buying the forms, what do they do, Don?
They contact their sales representative. Again, it seems like the questions have stopped coming in, which is fine. We don't need to belabor this, but we really, really appreciate everyone joining us today. We're very excited about this. And like I said, it's a complex topic. There are many different approaches that different brands take. And again, the whole intent of this standard series was to give more options that might be appropriate for your particular merchandising and sizing strategy. So please feel free to contact us here at Alvanon. Again, we appreciate you coming. Emily, as always, it was a pleasure delivering this with you. And go ahead, Jordan, if you want to take us home.
Sounds good, Don, Emily, thank you both so much. And thank all of you for joining us today, spending time with us. We really appreciate it. And we appreciate the questions. I mean, over 500 people, feels like we had as many questions as well. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get to all of them today. I will just drop this in. If you'd like to contact us, that's a link to our contact page. It's in the chat there. Overall, though, if you don't want to do anything and you got to run to another meeting, tomorrow, 24 hours from right now at 2 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow, an email. You will receive an email directly from Zoom, and it will have all of the information that you need. It'll have a link to the recording of this webinar. It'll have a link to the landing page that talks about and provides the brochures for the North American Women Series. It'll obviously link out to, or not obviously, but it'll also link out to the rest of the North American Standard Series. So the men's, the children's, and the extended size children's. And then it'll include a link to all of our available standards, the full list there. If you are at all interested, or if you had any technical questions that we weren't really able to get to today, there was a lot about armhole sizing and stuff like that. I really encourage you to head over to the contact page via the link that I just dropped in the chat there, and reach out to anybody. You'll most likely be talking to Rhonda at one point, who I know is on this webinar, and a number of other people. So thank you all again so much for joining us, and thanks for spending your time with us, and I hope you have a great day.
Great day. Friends of